welcome to this webinar. This webinar has been created with a view to give sectoral implications of the economic impact as a result of COVID-19. And it has been our effort to give you a wide variety of different flavor that what is happening in agriculture, what is happening in government, what is happening in educational institutions. So keeping that in mind, and we have got an excellent panel, starting with Prithvi ji. He is currently the Secretary Finance in Government of Rajasthan, and he is an expert on health economics, medical education, and also the financial services industry, urban infrastructure and governance in India. And he has also served as a top manager and project directors. So Dr. Prithvi is also very actively engaged into exploring the intersection of society, governance, and healthcare for the growth opportunities and creating a future course of action. So he is also an alum of the Johns Hopkins University in US. So welcome very much, Prithvi ji, in this webinar.
Thank you.
Namaskar. And then we have Dr. Brajesh Kumar ji, who is a professor in Arun Jaitley National Institute of Financial Management. It is an institution of eminence under Ministry of Finance, Government of India. So he is a prolific writer and a regular participant in academic and policy debates. He holds a master's degree in economics and also a doctorate in the same. And he has more than 17 years of teaching, research, training, consulting, and a lot of different experience in the government sector. And he has worked on many important projects of the Government of India, as well as he has been a consultant to the Ford Foundation, UGC sponsored projects, IDPAD, ICCSR, etc. So very warm welcome to you, Brajesh ji, in this webinar. Then we have Dr. Prashant Gupta ji. He is a professor in IIM Trichy. He is a faculty member in the finance area in IIM Trichy, and he has more than 2 decades of experience. He has a blend of industry, academic, research, training, and consulting. He has been in the industry also. Then he has been with the Gautam Buddha University, then IMI. So he has got a very big experience in the industry and in the academia. He has consulted many companies, including ONGC, IOC, Oil India, HPCL, just to name a few. And he has been to many countries. He's got a very impressive, very long CV. I'm just sharing important highlights. And also he has been consulting with the International Finance Corporation, World Bank Group on the areas of corporate governance. And he has also been serving as a member of Accounting Standards Board of ICAI, that is Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. So very warm welcome to you, Prashant ji. Then we have CA Jatin Srivastava ji, who is a partner with Seth and Associates. He is a seasoned professional and possessing more than 16 years of rich and diverse experience of serving as an economic advisor, business consultant, and CFO to the various funded startups, SMEs, and corporate entities across India. He is also the co-founder and partner of Seth and Associates. And he has also been a very passionate teacher. And he has helped a lot of students to create startups. And he has been a speaker in many SME forums. And currently he is based in Lucknow, but his impact is felt all over India, rather many parts of Asia. And so very warm welcome to you, Jatin ji. He is also an MBA from IMT Ghaziabad, other than being a chartered accountant. Welcome, Jatin.
Thank you, sir.
And then we have our own Prashant Sharma ji, who is an associate professor with IIHMR University. He has done his PhD from NIFM, Faridabad. And he is a very prolific author and researcher. And he has worked on the project on black money and many other important projects related to the bigger impact in the country. And currently, he's very much interested in capital markets and health economics. So he has been the main driving force behind this webinar. So heartiest thanks to you, Prashant Sharma ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And my name is Pankaj Gupta. I am currently the president of IIHMR University. My area of teaching and research has been mainly in finance and accounting, especially the cost and managerial accounting, corporate governance, and so on. But of late, I have also developed a lot of interest in meditation and mindfulness and wellness. So it has been quite a great opportunity to be with IIHMR University, which is a premier university in the area of healthcare research. And we have 3 schools. One is School of Health and Hospital, another is School of Pharma, and a School of Development Studies. So we, our students have been serving top organizations, including healthcare organizations, hospitals, policy bodies like Niti Aayog, Ayushman Bharat, and our research is also very well known. So I want to thank all my distinguished speakers once again to agree to speak in this very, very important webinar. So thank you again. So let me just share a brief overview that how we are planning to move ahead. So after this initial introductions, then Dr. Prithvi Raj ji will be sharing about the macroeconomic outlook of Indian economy post-COVID and what are the government initiatives and implications on healthcare. And then Brajesh Kumar ji will be sharing about implications on agriculture sector. Then CA Jatin Srivastav ji will be sharing the implications on manufacturing and MSME sector. Then Dr. Prashant Gupta ji will be sharing implications on services sector, except the healthcare and capital markets. And then I will be sharing a little bit on education sector and what are the career prospects in post-COVID era. And Prashant Sharma ji will be sharing about implications on the capital market. So that is introduction about the webinar and about our distinguished speakers. So now let me request Dr. Prithvi Raj ji, who is a senior IAS and Secretary Finance with the government of Rajasthan, and also medical doctor and alum of Johns Hopkins, to please start his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Prithvi ji.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I'll just add 2-3 more things. I'm working in cost-effective healthcare also, and I did certificate course from US Johns Hopkins University in health economics, and leadership and management also, apart from my MPH. So first of all, we'll be covering like what is the outlook of Indian economy post-COVID. So the macroeconomic we talk about, like the macroeconomic like GDP, unemployment rate, inflation, GDP, debt ratio, interest rate, and demand side sluggishness. These 4-5 points, which actually impacts hugely. Like GDP is going to down. Many of the rating agencies, including like Goldman Sachs, Nomura, investment fund like Bernstein, they have already predicted this financial year, the GDP growth rate of India will be in negative terrain, somewhere between -2 to -4%. So that means the overall GDP, overall the market size, everything will be going to contract. So this will have impact in all sectors, including the health. Similarly, the many surveys has revealed during lockdown period, the unemployment rate has gone to 25 and to 30%. Generally, it is around 7-8%. So there is a 4-fold increase in the unemployment, and we don't see any improvement in unemployment at least in next 1 or 2 quarters. So that is very worrisome situation. At the same time, the demand has sluggished. Although the inflation rate is currently low, around 4.5%, but my worry is it may go into the stagflation. Means the inflation is going upward and they will be pushed on the coast side. So that will lead to like increasing in the cost of the products due to the unavailability of the labor force, rising prices, and some supply shocks, and maybe oil prices are also going to happen. So all these macro indicators of economy are clear cut in a direction where we'll see contraction of economy, contraction of GDP, and it will have impact almost every sector of economy. So we talk about like the government has declared the economic stimulus package of something around 21 lakh crore, and it's must talked about like 10% of GDP. So there's a famous firm called Fitch Solutions. They work in macroeconomic and industry research. So they said the actual the stimulus is just of 1% of 1.8% of GDP. How they arrive? This is the half of the package is like fiscal measures, and rest is like government loan, credit extension by banks, and the new expenditure. The actual contribution in economy is due to the new expenditure. New expenditure is just 1% of the GDP. So actually, what contributes like 5-6 sectors which in new expenditure they have identified like pension support, temporary tax cuts, some infrastructure upgrade. That includes healthcare also, some emergency fund and rural employment guarantee schemes. So that will ensure some money flowing to the rural areas and maybe coming to the system back, and that will help us to retain the economy. So overall, like for the state of Rajasthan, we have forecasted something like 20 to 25% contraction in this financial year. So which will be around more than $3 billion in state on income. It's going to hugely impact if we aggregate for all India, there will be huge impact. So how the COVID pandemic and the economic situation arising out of it impacting the health sector is a more concern for people like us, those who are practitioner of health, or we are directly or indirectly related with the health sector. So first of all, I just want to make few points. What has been given in this stimulus package for health sector? So they had given something like health insurance cover for health workers, 50 lakhs rupees per worker across the country. Another 50,000 crore package for like emergency health response to the COVID, and some provision for essential kits, lab testing, and COVID containment program, some 4,000 crore plus given to the different states. The number may be looking large, but it's really not large. Looking into the size of the country and the people we have, the per capita expenditure is in just few rupees only, which is quite insufficient. What they said in this stimulus, they are going to invest in the grassroots health institutions, infectious disease, lab network, surveillance, but there was no fixed amount or commitment which we are going to do this much, invest this much money. So that makes leave open many things. It depends upon the state governments, and since the health is a state subject, so most of the expenditure is borne by the state governments, and of course, in the government of India, some part from government of India like NRHM, NHM, and other centrally sponsored schemes. An interesting announcement was there: the preparedness for future pandemics. So I'm a little bit skeptical about prediction of pandemics. These are like black swan events, you just cannot predict. But then what you can do is you can create a robust health system, a robust network of the health institutions, programs, and policies which create a system which can respond to the any kind of health exigencies that include maybe an epidemic, pandemic, or any other cases. So that is where our responsibilities lies. What kind of input we give to the policy making people, or the hospital administrators, or the private health practitioner. The interesting thing is, like, I was just wondering how this is going to impact the health sector. The post-corona, there will be like things like, there are two kind of impact during this corona. We see people are saying the health sector is going to gain, we have to go into further subsector into the health. If you see, the current focus is on the infectious disease only. And the only government hospitals are delivering, private hospitals are hardly participating. Individual practitioner, standalone doctors and physicians not seeing the patients at all. So their incomes and their revenues has gone down, almost closer to zero. So that is going to impact like working in private sector hospitals versus government sector hospitals also. And what will happen? Few sectors like immunity boosters, like some antibiotics, some pharmaceutical items like face masks and protective devices, these markets have actually gone up. Maybe like sanitizers, soaps, and something like the hygiene related, and some wellness improvement products, but not all health. So there will be selective impact. Within health, there will be negative as well as a positive impact. So we could see the post pandemic, there will be different scenarios will be appearing. One in like there will be a lot of focus on preventive and promotive healthcare, and the people will be going more for that, requesting such items or soliciting such items where they can ask for the customized health solutions. The concept may be like health design clinics for individual needs, home-based care, geriatric cares, and the interesting area of jobs will be arise at interface of technology and patient care. There are a lot of opportunities will going to there. Something like telemedicine, data-related startups. Many of are already there. Some I have enumerated some 45 or something like that, and every day something is adding. So we can see where we can find the better job opportunities and how we can contribute. So I think for like response for like these kind of unusual health situations or public health demands, we need to restructure and redesign the healthcare system. We should strengthen the supply of the health professionals, and we should more focus on the use of technology and task shifting so that we can optimize the human resources. And of course, the infrastructure, post health infrastructure building, and the cost effective healthcare. I think I have covered quite the larger perspective of the COVID and post-COVID impact. And I believe my time is also running over. If someone has question, he can put, we can later on address this question. Thank you, Dr. Gupta.
Thank you so much, Prithviji. It was really very nice and wonderful presentation, and you also have
and timely also.
Really, and very, very timely also. So thank you so much. And I'm sure people will have questions, so I'll again come back to you. So in the meanwhile, let me request Dr. Brajesh Kumarji to please give his perspective on the agriculture sector, please.
Thank you very much. I'll be making effort to highlight one of the most important sector of the economy, country with which it is known, and it will always be known, that is agriculture sector. So my area of discussion will be epicentering, starting through key features or highlights of the agriculture sector and what is its role in the nation building in Indian economy per se, and what are the government efforts which has been taken and which is being taken during this present crisis of COVID-19, and the challenges which this agriculture sector has been facing for long. And because of this injection of unexpected pandemic, what challenges this sector will be experiencing. And given this challenge, what are the best opportunities which we could explore and strengthen our life with the constants. So that will be another component of discussion. And we have been observing that there is a consistent rural-urban migration in our country, and that has given little slackness in the rural economy. So how best we can capitalize this COVID-19 in reviving our rural economy? I'll be attempting to put some highlights on this. And then we'll be making an effort to identify some of the key areas which could be the prospect for development in the country, particularly during post-COVID period. If we talk about agriculture sector in India, we know that this is one of the most oldest economic activity which we have been observing right from Indus Valley civilization, or to some extent you can say prior to that of the some part of the or some places of the southern India, where this country ranked second in terms of worldwide farm outputs, and approximately 48% of 1.3 billion population approximately who depends. And the GDP share, if you talk about it, stands approximately 18% of it. And whereas its composition, if you look at that, India's agricultural GDP is approximately $395 billion. So it's a huge money generating sector. And so far as resources are concerned, this country is rich in terms of 10th largest arable land we have, and approximately 180 square hectare, which is more than the United European Union agricultural land. And the country is blessed with 20 agroclimatic region, and almost all 15 major climates which we find over the globe exist in our country. And you know that there are 60 soil types, and out of which 46 is found in India. So in terms of natural resources, agriculture sector, we are blessed with many good things. And that has given a boost to us to achieve certain successes, like largest producers in spices, pulses, milk, tea, etc. And second largest producer of wheat, rice, next to China we have, fruits and vegetables, sugarcane, cotton, oilseeds. We can name many more things. And particularly in terms of this fruits, mango and banana, we are the largest producer. And for fruits and vegetables, we are the second in terms of the global production. And so far as irrigated area is concerned, we have observed that our food grains are produced or grown to approximately 64.8 million hectares, which is on the basis of the irrigation. And we have a largest livestock population also, and we are exporter of the livestock also. So that way, this land is not only feeding the 1.3 billion, but the largest population of the livestock. This is what the strength of this agriculture sector of our country. During this COVID period, we have observed that as we used to produce tractors more, and we are the leading exporter of tractors in this world, this sector has got affected because of this COVID-19. And this is one side of the story. Other side of the story is we have got an opportunity to work out an alternative, or to work out a balancing force between a labor-intensive agriculture and the capital-intensive agriculture. That has given one insight to build our plan and policy for the coming time periods. You will observe that government during the recent period have made an effort to give a boost to the agriculture sector. There are very agoging and sensitive challenges which our farmers are experiencing. But despite all these challenges, these farmers have contributed in building nations not only, but also setting some achievements in the global market and over the world agriculture sector. Out of which, one of the key important efforts which government has taken in the recent past, that was ENAM, that is Electronic National Agriculture Market, which was meant to create a unified national market for agriculture commodities through networking. And this is through the agriculture produce marketing committees. Recently in the finance minister's speech, in the third tranche of 20 lakh crore, talked about to strengthen the APMCs, these agriculture produce marketing committees. And you have seen that within this ENAM platform, approximately 16.4 million farmers got registered, and 1,24,000 traders were registered. So agriculture, what we used to assume before 1940s or after this post-liberalization period, is completely different. Mandis, e-mandis were developed, and these e-mandis is contributing a lot during this COVID-19 period, where it is expected to maintain a social distancing. So this is another important effort of the government. Second important point which you can work out is the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sinchai Yojana, which is meant to irrigate the to improve the water efficiency. There is a popular motto which we talk about: per drop, more crop. Those kinds of slogans are related to this kind of yojana. Second is your Pradhan Mantri Krishi Vikas Yojana, which is aimed to motivate groups of farmers to take up organic farming, which is a future agro business which we are talking about, and which has got a great demand over the globe. So third scheme which we have observed is the Pradhan Mantri Kusum, which is meant to provide more than 20 lakh farmers for setting up stand pumps, and to help another 15 lakh farmers solarize their grid-connected pump sets. So these are the key efforts which we have been observing that has given a cushion to face this pandemic with the least pain. And you have observed that during this lockdown period of approximately 50 days or more than 50 days, and some of the key agriculture activities were not stopped. They have kept on contributing because of the earlier corrected decisions, best and building some infrastructure for the agriculture sector. We can observe it slightly different, that this COVID-19 will give an opportunity as a blessings in disguise to strengthen our agribusiness, agro-processing units, and agriculture-based marketing system. And we can have some of the huge potentials in let's say, having an export sector, agro-produced export sector. So that is a positive side of this. And negative side is this, that we are facing with some unknown threat, unknown enemy, which may damage, which is damaging our human infrastructure and reshaping its workforce system. So we find that majority of labor force is moving from urban area now to the rural area, which is going to increase the demand in the rural area and will put pressure on the rural infrastructure. So to overcome such situation, Indian farmers will face multiple challenges. Primary among these could be there will be a stress on the land, there will be a stress on the water, there will be a stress on the soil health, and lack of knowledge and information about high value growth products. Similarly, there could be a situation of weak market linkages, inefficient supply chains, a variety of such challenges farmers is experiencing and will be experiencing in the coming days. And since we all know that Indian farmers are heavily dependent upon the monsoon rainfall and climate, the way it is changing, and some of the natural calamities which we all are observing will have some negative effect on the Indian farmers and particularly agriculture sector. In order to do so, in order to strengthen our Indian farmers, to create an income revolution in the agriculture sector, we need to capture the entire value chain system, right from researcher stage to where the farmers will be able to realize money in their wallets and pockets. If we explore it like this, we can identify some key challenges. One, there is a scarcity of resources, and how best we can utilize these scarce resources to contribute in our GDP is the one. Second is, there is a scope to improve yield of, through using high-yielding variety seeds or proper irrigation system, plus optimum utilization of the technology and human manpower. Third challenges which we can identify as the multiple intermediaries which exist in the mandis, farm gate market to the retail market, wholesale market, and how to bridge the gap in the lack of, yeah.
Just wanted to tell that there is a 3-minute overshot time, so
I'll be summing up quickly in 2.5 minutes.
Okay, sure.
So next challenge which we can observe is the losses in the food chain system and trends in consumption moving towards fruits and vegetables and pulses. We have an opportunity of as digital and analytics, financing and crop insurance, investing in cold storage, investing in fruits and vegetables and pulses to meet such demand, and to establish linkages, market linkages between farmers and buyers. And digital ecosystem of agriculture is better in our country. We can refine it through better access to inputs, financing, digital infrastructure, improving the supply chain, farming as a service. Then we find that this migration issue, it will increase the labor force in the rural economy, and which will further contribute in generating or reviving our rural economy. 5 steps we can take to revive this rural economy while expanding the Manrega and fund it liberally. That 40,000 additional 40,000 crore additionally FM allocated. Provide finance directly to the farmers, explore exports aggressively, use the surplus labor to build rural infrastructure, and create an enabling policy environment. And in the third tranche of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, Finance Minister highlighted on the 11 major points, of which 8 pertain to miscellaneous items, ranging from 1 lakh to 1 lakh crore for building agriculture infrastructure to 500 crore for beekeeping, and another 500 crore for tomatoes, onion, potatoes, and other fruits and vegetables. Out of which 3 is very important efforts which this government has taken for reviving rural economy, particularly agriculture sector, while amending the Essential Commodities Act and bringing central legislations to allow farmers to sell their produce to anyone. And third is creating legal framework for contracting farming. And as a prospect during post-COVID, it is expected that through MSMEs and sister wings, departments of the annals of the government, agri-clinic, bakery, basket production, cane chairs, dal mining, jaggery, honey processing, floriculture, flour milling, groundnut oil production, vermicompost production, tools which is needed for producing this chips business, and we can have a temperature controlled supply chain food system. These are the prospective area which I am visualizing that in the coming time period, agriculture sector will be observing a positive impact as a blessings in disguise with the contribution of third tranche of 20 lakh crore by the government. Thank you very much. There are many things can be observed, contributed. So if you have any question, please drop us. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Dr. Brajesh. It was a very passionate presentation. So we'll come back to you for any questions. And so Jatinji, we are now running late by around 7 minutes, but you take your allotted time, or maybe can do it a little bit quickly if it is possible. Jatinji?
Yeah. I'm audible? Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So deliberating on the 2 dimensions that have been allocated to me, per se, one is the manufacturing part of it, and the other is the MSME part. So I like to start from manufacturing and try and cover the recent developments, some opportunities that emerge, and bringing the ground challenges, understanding, because I work with a lot of these manufacturing and MSMEs. I trigger these components. There's a lot of talk around China factor. There's a lot of talk around, local for vocal. After our Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned about it, there's a lot of interest at the same time for quite many years to make India as a manufacturing hub, but it has not become a reality. We need to understand why it has not been able to become a reality, and then only we can understand whether it will become a reality in coming time or not. So China factor brings in a new opportunity. It's opened up a new dimension altogether, because the whole world supply chain is facing those challenge of continuity. And there's a sentiment against China post-COVID, which Asian countries wish to benefit from. And India is not the only one vying for that particular slot. India is competing against the Asian countries like Philippines, Indonesia, Laos, Vietnam. All these countries have been trying to garner a larger portion of manufacturing sector, which are willing to move out of China to other locations for that. India is also one of the bigger countries looking for it, but India has not been so successful in past that it can be considered as a great achievement. But India is trying its best right now to make it happen. I'd like to highlight another factor which is very, very relevant for manufacturing, which is a recent change. And it is not because of COVID. It was before COVID, where the government of India has defined a new tax structure in their budget presentation in early this year. And they mentioned about a new taxation framework for new manufacturing entities, which will attract a lesser taxation. So earlier, the manufacturing entity was supposedly taxed at around 25% of their MSMEs, and if they're beyond bigger size, they were taxed around 33% net. But now, with a new dimension being added by the latest budget, it will be taxed around plus surcharge, net effect 17% overall at max. So this tax structure, why is it important? How it has had an impact? The tax structure is one of the biggest lucrative policy change which the government has tried to open up to the whole world to shift their manufacturing base to India and make it a manufacturing hub. That is one of traction point because other geographies have higher tax structures, and that is where India is going to trying to benefit from it. This red carpet was already been initiated. Is nothing related to COVID or lockdown or the recent economic frameworks, but India still is of the opinion, and Indian government is also of the opinion that we as a country will benefit from these movements, and manufacturing will become one of the prominent, employment sector for India. Second thing I like to talk about the defense part of it. India is coming up with 2 defense corridors, one in Tamil Nadu, belt, one in the UP belt. And these 2 defense corridors is being initiated as a policy framework to boost manufacturing of defense equipments and defense supplies, which not only will cater to the requirement of Indian armed forces, but also will cater to the requirement of emerging economies like African regions and some of the Asian countries. So that is one major area which India want to really push for manufacturing. And recently, there was also an announcement by the Chief of Staff, Defense Staff, General, and he mentioned that India will try and acquire more and more defense equipments from the indigenous manufacturers. That will also give a boost to the manufacturing sector per se. Defense is one major sector where we can see that benefit. Having worked with a lot of entrepreneurs which come into the mid-tier or tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, we have been working across country with these segments. There's a very interesting sentiment change. Earlier, the surplus capital that these entrepreneurs or these HNIs used to have, they used to park it in real estate, or they used to have a decent exposure to commercial real estate or residential real estate or even land bank for that matter. So core asset investment was lesser and non-core asset investment was on the higher side, especially when it comes to MSA, tier 1 and tier 2 cities. A lot of these people today want to move away from land exposure or real estate exposure because of the current changes which are happening and move back to the manufacturing because they find manufacturing is one of the areas which will have sustenance in future. Whether it is manufacturing of agri-processing, food processing, defense, electronics, pharmaceutical, or for that matter, MSME. But there is a tectonic shift in the mindset of these entrepreneurs to look at manufacturing or supply chain based MSMEs or enterprises which can cater to long-term needs, and they want to reduce their financial exposure to real estate sector, be it a commercial real estate sector or a residential real estate sector. Another thing which will see a lot of change when it comes to the economic activities on the ground. Moving on, I would like to talk about few challenges in manufacturing. Not very easy to shift framework from China to Cambodia, or for that matter from Vietnam to India. It is very difficult. It is not easy, and that is where these people will have to, the Indian entrepreneurs, Indian government, and the whole ecosystem have to look at how we can actually plug in the supply chain, the procurement part of it, and the distribution part of it. How the products which are manufactured in India can be taken to every corner of the world. It is something which is not a simple thing. It's a very, very challenging task. It's going to be one mammoth effort. Building ports, building highways, building expressways, building airports which are cargo-based airports, inland sea waterways. All those things will be relevant to connect the supply chain dots from manufacturing, from raw material to manufacturing, and from manufacturing to the consumption side. That is one of the bigger challenges with the government and the ecosystem will have to really look at. I already covered about the Asian countries competing with India. So India is not alone in competition, and India, if have to beat them, they have to bring out a product which are competitive in pricing, competitive in quality, and they're easy and quick supply chain integrated. If we are not able to achieve these 3 things, we will not be able to compete in the international landscape. The last part which I'll try to cover is a challenge part for manufacturing is the labor issues. India is considered to be one of the difficult geographies when it comes to labor issues, labor forces for that matter, The governments in various states, the government as a center have been trying to resolve these things. We have seen the Tata Nano fiasco, which shifted the plant from West Bengal to Gujarat. These things are not gone. These things still remain. So even if you open up the red carpet or play the red carpet for bigger investment, bigger manufacturing setups to brought to India, unless and until you resolve the labor issues or you resolve the land issues which are required. So government is trying to create and earmark certain bigger land parcels which can be converted into SEZ or can be converted into food parks or manufacturing hubs. But at the same time, they will have to really solve the problem of labor. If you look at the recent developments, some of the state governments have come up with an ordinance to say that 3 years compliances and labor law exemptions have been given to new setups. Very positive move, but it has our own flip side as well. But this kind of easing is very, very important if you really want to bring in larger manufacturing players in India. Otherwise, large manufacturing players will not be able to shift their base to India because they want quick movement, they want quick integration. They do not want slow and steady. They cannot wait for 10 years to make things happen on ground. The world is moving very fast. They also want to move fast. If in manufacturing really want to benefit from it, we need to be really fast in executing things. Coming to next part, that is MSMEs. You would have gone through the recent announcements and developments which talk about MSMEs, which talk about various schemes targeted towards MSMEs. Then a very important change which has happened is the new definition. Let me take you into a little history of it. The MSME definition has also historically been on the investment, net investment in capital assets in manufacturing. It was the primary definition targeting the manufacturing sector. Service sector was later added to it so that all small businesses in manufacturing service can be captured through the MSME definition. So this definition of investment base has now been shifted to another new definition, which now talks about turnover base. But there is a middle path, there are a set of sequence which has happened. There's a lot of representation which has happened for having a labor-based definition, having a turnover-based definition, having a economic impact-based definition. There are a lot of those alternatives are there, but today the definition stands after the announcement is that turnover and investment will be considered as a parameter. Couple of days back, Mr. Nitin Gadkari has clarified that it will either be turnover or investment, but not mix of it. But trust me, to the benefit of the audience here, I'd like to clarify, unless and until governments come up with a government order and says that we will only be utilizing turnover or investment, it is going to be a lot of ambiguity on the market. The entrepreneurs are not clear whether this benefit will be available to them or not. Other things that need to be clarified to these entities definitely is whether their transition from one category to another category will bring any benefit or will be a flip side of it. So entrepreneurs, have been questioning us, what will happen if I have been categorized today as medium and tomorrow I am categorized as small? What will happen to me? What benefits? But for the benefit of academic deliberation, this definition is a basis of all government policy at the center state level. This definition is a basis for all government policy at the state level. At the same time, financial institutions take this definition very, very seriously when it devises their financial products and access to credit. And also all the related laws and compliances and exemptions and reliefs are targeted towards a definition of MSME. So going forward, the turnover will become a primary criteria of definition. And I expect all government norms to be linked to turnover. Like example, exempting micro enterprise up to 5 crore of turnover to file audit report, or they can ease GST filing requirements for these enterprises altogether. The government can do that to simplify the functionality for these kind of entities in MSME. But time will tell how the policy framework will utilize a new definition, how the financial ecosystem will utilize a new definition, and how the MSMEs are going to benefit directly or indirectly from the definition change. From my understanding, it is a very positive move, much needed, much delayed, but come at least now that benefit can be transferred. There's a lot of SIDBI schemes. People talk about the announcement of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and they say 3 lakh crore will be given to the MSME. The reality is not such. Let me clarify again on this. This 3 lakh crore is an extension of credit. It is not for new projects. None of this money is being given to those who are starting new venture. It is being given to those who already are running a venture, already having a credit line, and they need further liquidity to manage their operations on the whole. So that is one. Second thing that they announce is subordinate debt for stressed asset. How will this work? And then nitty-gritty I'm talking because all these primary things are there in the public domain. You can go and study about it. I'll talk more about the analysis part. The financial institution will lend money to individual entrepreneurs on their personal asset guarantee. Individual entrepreneurs will pool this money into the enterprise as an additional equity. This will improve the capital structure of the entity which is stressed or under stress or NPA. That additional infusion of money will be utilized for the purpose of rotation of money in the business, generate money and repay it back. Why this route? Because this route will ensure that the promoter cannot utilize corporate wheel. They will be personally obligated to pay the additional capital given to them on individual name. But the company will benefit from equity infusion. The individual will have to take personal lending out of it. This structure has been designed very methodically. I'm really, I'm pretty happy in the thought process behind this particular framework. It will have a huge impact in the way the business is being done on the ground, and people will try and understand the corporate wheel cannot remove them from the financial obligations. And sick units can benefit from it, stress units can benefit from it, but we are still awaiting for a detailed note from government ministries and financial institutions to help us understand more about the nitty-gritties of it and how this whole procedure will actually happen on ground. Coming to some of the new, a lot of entrepreneurs have been talking about, and some of the audience might also be representative of that body and that segment. There are a lot of schemes from SIDBI which can fund your new ventures. There are two schemes, SAFE and SAFE Plus, which fund the enterprise in the COVID manufacturing space. Any enterprise who are working towards any production or service supply, which is helpful in fighting COVID, can take advantage of it. The benefit is restricted to 50 lakh in one scheme and limited to 2 crores up to another scheme. The interest is 5%, so it is very cheaper availability of credit, but it's available only for 18 months period. It is not for a long-term period. So SIDBI has given some very interesting schemes recently. STAR scheme for solar for MSMEs. There's a SMILE scheme for new venture setups, new manufacturing venture setups. There's a trade finance scheme for traders. There is a working capital scheme for service class segments. So SIDBI has done a lot of schemes. So those who are worried in the market and saying that only existing creditors will benefit, existing enterprise will benefit, there's nothing for the new enterprise. There are banking instruments, there are financial institutions which are willing and interested to lend this. You will have to reach out to them and really work it out for yourself. Coming to the opportunities, MSME has always been one of the major employer. Informal sector, you can say it, semi-organized sector, you can say it. You can say that tier 2 and tier 3 economy works on MSME. So MSME have been the backbone of employment creation for the whole country and will continue to remain so. One of the biggest reasons why the government has given a lot of injection to the bottom of the pyramid and also given a lot of injections to the MSME, because they realize that Indian economy will revive on the basis of these two segments. Corporate entities in India are limited to handful, and bringing corporate entities towards India in short term will be very, very difficult. It's not going to be easy. That is the mindset behind these policy frameworks, which have been announced recently. So I feel that MSME will create a lot more jobs. MSME will also be able to absorb labor migration. Now, coming to labor migration, there is a flip side and there's a benefit side. I'll not talk about the human condition. I'll rather stick to the economic part of it. The labor surplus states like UP, Bihar, and other parts, Jharkhand, these are labor, West Bengal, these are labor surplus states. Now, enterprises in these regions will benefit from labor migration toward this region. But there are labor shortfall states like Gujarat, labor shortfall states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, they're not having enough labor, and a lot of migrant labor were employed there. So the labor shortfall states will find difficult for the continuity of economics in those states, but labor surplus state will find this as an opportunity. So like UP for that matter, I'll give you an example, is trying to attract a lot of manufacturing enterprises in UP or big project investments in UP so that labor surplus can be easily utilized. And this labor is willing to stay back to the state today, given the kind of conditions they have seen in their resident states where they were pre-COVID. It's an opportunity for some states, it's a challenge for other states. On the whole, in India has surplus labor to take advantage of, and India should take advantage of surplus labor that is at their disposal. The challenge for the MSME, one of the bigger challenges for MSME is the demand side. The demand problem is something that has been the biggest critic of the recent announcements. There has been no direct boost, or there's no direct impetus to the demand side. And a lot of critique or economists have been talking about whether the government is willing to do something there or not. So MSME is also questioning the demand side of it. They feel there is very, very conservative mindset in the consumer today for consuming products or spending, because they have become cash dear. So for them, cash is now the biggest king. They don't want to invest, they don't want to spend, they want to hold on to that cash so that they can sail through the uncertain times. They don't know whether job will remain or not. And Indian middle class and lower middle class is the biggest consumer, which MSME have been catering, and they have become conservative. That is one of the challenges they have to really face. Another thing which will be a challenge for them is cash flow cycles. A lot of these MSME has a challenge.
जतिन जी,
yes sir, just
टाइम का थोड़ा इशू आ रहा है. Yeah.
30 seconds. I'm just closing.
Okay.
30 seconds. So cash flow cycle for MSME is another challenge they have to really overcome. They provide credit to the market and their money is stuck. So they cannot go back and purchase goods or produce more goods and sell those things. So credit cycle, the credit and cash cycle is one of the biggest problem the MSMEs face. And I think that is also one of the reasons why government has come up with liquidity injections, but it's still not sufficient to boost the state of affairs with MSME. So both manufacturing and MSME provide us great opportunity at the current state of affairs. At the same time, they are marred with a lot of challenges on ground, and we collectively have to find solutions for them. So with this, I'd like to close my discussion. I'm really open and happy to address some queries later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Jatin. And it was a very thoughtful presentation and very analytical, and you have really done a very good thing. So now I'll request to Dr. Prashant Gupta ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I know time constraint is already there. So I'll try to be a bit crisp and finish in time.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Fine. So looking at the services, this is like Prajesh ji was telling, agriculture is a wide area, services. So a lot of services come together. So what I've tried to group them in certain features, and then we'll discuss about that. Now, if you look at any crisis comes in, see, it was a Great Depression or it was a dot-com bubble, and then later 2008 financial crisis come in. Now the question is, what will happen with this crisis? This crisis is slightly different than all other crises. Somewhat the reasons were known of other crises, but this crisis has suddenly popped up. So slightly different kind of crisis. Now, if you look at the impact on services, the services are one of the worst hit, particularly few services like aviation, hospitality, and all. So there is a PMI index. If you recently go to that, in February, that index used to be the all-time high, 85 months high. That was 57.5. It went down to 49.3 in March, and in February there was a drastic plunge. It dropped to 5.4. Only 5.4, so 57.5 to 5.4 in 2 months. That shows clearly the impact on services. Now, people are fearing that worse than the world recession that we faced in 1930. Reuters has also done a survey, and they found that April to June quarter is going to be one of the worst since 90s in India. I'm talking particularly about India. So signals are not good. Signals are obviously scary. And particularly if you look at the banking sector, Jatin was also talking about the liquidity crisis faced by MSMEs, which are generally treated by banks and all. Yes, that is the biggest problem. And there's India Ratings. They have done a research, and their research report recently out. They say that the banking system may rise up to 5.5 trillion. That is a slippage that the banking will face, and majority of it coming from corporate sector and some 2.1 trillion from non-corporate sector. And India, being largely a service economy now, is actually going to face burns of that. So problem is there. Now, as I was saying, service sectors are large sectors. What I've done is I've categorized them into 3 categories: services who are worst hit, services which are moderately hit, and services which had somewhat positive or very optimistic scenario they are facing because of the COVID. Now, tourism, travel, aviation, this is one of the worst suffered industry globally. If you look at the dip is around 45% if you take the average. Second biggest effect is on banking and financial services. I've already pointed out the slippage in India. It's almost about 5.5 trillion, and liquidity crisis is looming. Assets are turning bad. Businesses, because of the recession, their money is stuck. They are not able to repay the loans, facing burns. And public sector banks, particularly because there's a pressure from government also. So like earlier, the government said 3 months moratorium. Now today they have announced 3 more months moratorium. So these banks are also facing a lot of problem with that. Similarly, with it goes with the microfinance companies also. Another worst hit service is hospitality. So hotels and banquet and these kind of services where the mass gathering used to happen. So this is all stuck. There's almost zero business. Some respite for hospitality in some of the cities. Only in worst hit cities is like government is taking over certain hotels, but that is peanut. That is very small fragment. Another thing is entertainment. Then entertainment, again, the two facets. When you look about the digitized entertainment, that is booming. So Netflix or it is Disney or other options, they are booming because people are stuck at home and they are utilizing those services. On the other end, the real entertainment in the sense that movie halls, cinemas, or any mass gathering like sports events and all, they are also worst hit. If you look at the services who have the moderate impact, then you will find like supply chain and logistics. Yes, that is affected because manufacturing is not happening. So obviously people are stuck at home. So there is less turnover of goods, but still because of the essential goods, because of the supply of essential goods, there is some business that is still gaining. So whether it was sanitizers or sanitization equipments to essential goods like e-tables and all, so that part is working, but it is affected, and maybe because of the relaxations that government is planning, it may get some benefit in near future. Similarly, moderate hit is utility services, so electricity, water, gas services. Supply side is a problem. Demand side is not that problem, but supply side is a problem. Another moderately hit services are like IT and IT-enabled services. Again, there are the two extremes you will find. Certain IT companies are booming. They're getting good businesses. Like we are using this Zoom and WebEx and all these kind of services are gaining popularity. At the other hand, many IT companies who are developing their softwares for manufacturing companies, for aviation companies, for automobile companies. Now, these companies are facing problem because their payments are stuck. Many of my friends are also in this industry, and they said their payments are stuck from these companies. So new software development and sustaining high cost of human resources is one of the challenges they are facing. So another thing is because people are at home, cost is slightly lesser. They're also taking advantage of offering discounted services and getting more businesses from those kind of services, those kind of applications where business is gaining. And if you look at the positive impact on certain services, so definitely digital and internet economy is the biggest gainer. So suddenly there is a boom and usage of data has increased, and any solution which is digital is gaining popularity. So whether it is a e-commerce which is gaining popularity, now relaxations have been done and e-commerce companies are allowed. People are still scared to move out and go to the retail market. E-commerce is gaining. Same is with the edutech. Though Pankaj Gupta ji will talk in detail about the education industry and impact of COVID on education industry, but education industry is gaining a lot because of the edutech. So over to Gupta ji, when you will address, I think you will be doing that. Another positive impact on services, if you look at its telecom services. So telecom and to some extent fintech also. fintech using cutting edge technologies and algo based models. A lot of companies are providing loans just on the click of button, so no physical verification and those things are required. So these companies are these kind of services are actually gaining. Now challenges are immense. Because business size is going down, so challenges is of related to unemployment. Already discussed in agriculture sector is also happening. Prithviji also addressed, and Jatinji also talked about, that is availability of money. So scarce debt capital, that is also one challenge. And for that, the pressure is all coming on the public funding institution, public financial institutions and banks. And as I already told, this NPA and bad asset is also one challenge. What can be the solutions for that? Though there is no ready-made solution, government is also trying at its best. Industries are also trying at its best. But some of the solutions like government is working. Recently, they have gone for the rate cut and all. The idea is the more capitalization. But still, I agree with the Jatin, it still is not sufficient. A lot more is to be done. It looks like very, very huge amount, but practically, when it goes down to the real users, it is not that big. Government is also roping in money in infrastructure. I think that is needed, though it's not directly related to my topic services, but when I'm talking about unemployment, then infrastructure and construction is one of the biggest employers, so that may help. Adoption of cutting edge technology is giving benefits, and it will further give benefits because your productivity, your efficiency improves on that. Government should also need to think on personal tax cuts, because individual tax cut is also that government should look at. And best or the most needed thing is the cooperation among the businesses. In this hard time, that cooperation is needed. Because this challenge, as we have discussed, this is very different. It is unprecedented, and it need to be addressed differently. So whatever measures government and industry, policymakers, and we academicians and other economists and all, measures should be all inclusive and comprehensive. Here we cannot talk about that you are thinking of the silos. So together a comprehensive plan need to be done, and greater global cooperation is also needed. So it's not only cooperation within the country, within the industry, within the businesses, it's also cooperation needed within the countries. And the financially sound and might countries should come forward for the poor and vulnerable countries. That is there. Now, when you're talking about all this gloomy picture, there are certain positive signs. I was looking at some of the QAs related to travel. What will happen to travel and how it will be done. So yesterday itself, there was a news item in Financial Business Standard, and there's a travel app, IXI Go. They have recently done a survey, and they found that 68% of the Indians are ready to travel immediately after lockdown, and 20% within 3 to 6 months. Now, government has also opened up the domestic flights, and those tickets are well sold. Another sign, if you look at Indian Railway, yesterday only they started booking of those 200 trains. I was surprised to know in just 3 hours they have sold 500 tickets. That means fear is there, yes, but still people are willing to travel. Yes, a counter is maybe because they are stuck, maybe they are stranded, so it is like that. But the survey of IXI Go says the 70% are willing to travel, and remaining 20% are willing to travel in next 3 to 6 months. So some positive signs are coming. The idea is what to do. So crisis comes with opportunities, and when opportunities exist, smart people look at that opportunities. Again, a recent news item yesterday only, I was going through the Swiggy has started delivering liquor in Ranchi, and they are in touch with other governments, and very soon they will do that. Now, in public, we accept or not, but liquor, tobacco, their consumption is increasing when people are stuck in their homes. Now they have found this opportunity and started, and then a new business is emerging. They are not only supporting on online a management system, but also delivery. Same ways, Times Education, Zero Education, these all are providing online services. Like I'd like to give example of IIM Trichy itself. We tied up with them because we are offering lots of online programs. But the moment this COVID crisis comes in, we immediately shifted our all MDP. So we are providing MDP to Larsen & Toubro and HPCL and ONGC. We have all these MDPs, we have immediately shifted onto online mode with the help of these technologies. So we cannot travel, they cannot come, but the program is still going on. So these are the things that we need to try to find out where we can leverage and get the best advantage of the available technologies. As I said, crisis comes with opportunities. Look at what happened in China in 2002. SARS, almost similar problem happened in China. Almost whole China was locked down. And then Alibaba and JD.com came in. And Alibaba and JD emerged and got a big business. Similarly, new services like Instacart and Postmates, they are recently introduced. Now they are reducing the contact between different stages of delivering these couriers and all. So new businesses are also emerging, and new business offerings will also come and will address. Recently, I was going through one television ad of this Urban Claps. They have recently introduced low touch services. So low touch or no touch, these kind of services will also emerge. So these are the opportunities for new services. So I'll conclude with this. From a McKinsey report, I find, and I like that. So I'm concluding with this, that we, as of now, we need to use these 5 R. That is resolve, resilience, return, reimagination, and reform. Resolve means the immediate problems, there are immediate challenges, we need to resolve that. Resilience is addressing near-term cash management, because that is going to be very, very important. For any business, any service, cash management is important. Then return is create a detailed plan to return to the business. You cannot sit at home. So you have to come back to return to business. So you have to strategize for that. And for that, you have to reimagination. So reimagine the next normal. We have to accept this next normal or the different normal. And how to reinvent, that we need to think. And finally, the ball goes to the government's part, that is reforms. So how government is going to reform. So regulatory and competitive environment, how government works on that, that is also important. So it's time to reset, and survival of the fittest is always, so it will happen here also. Those who are financially sound can bear those services, or those businesses will last. That does not mean others cannot, but they'll have to struggle slightly more. Thank you so much. And open for question and answer at the end of the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Prashant ji. Your talk was very, very focused, and you have covered a wide variety of issues. So thank you so much. And since we're already running quite late, so I think that I should not be speaking, but I'll just say very briefly that we all in the education sector are already gearing up for the change. And as we know that even after the students are joining back, because the UGC guidelines have come and they've been sharing, we can start in September, but the social distancing guidelines have to be followed. Already in the universities and colleges, there are different norms of sanitization and hygiene have already put in there. It is already in practice. And a very big movement is already happening towards the online mode. But when we talk about the online mode, it is to be seen from the angle of that how does it fit within the overall strategy of the organization. Total augmented learning models are, phasing away, and in our university also we have started building all the online modules, and faculty members are preparing. And In addition to that, there is a talk about creating those pre-recorded lectures. But as we know that they do not give that high level of satisfaction to the students.
Right.
So therefore, the hybrid model or a total online model or a face-to-face and recorded, so all the organizations are moving in that direction. And I believe that a lot of this churning will take place, and any educational institute, if they are really committed about creating value for all the stakeholders, including the students, faculty, the research community, industry, and so on. So they are going to really do very well even after this COVID pandemic is over. And also for the students, when I was talking to some of my students who are doing the pharmaceutical management, so we had some CEOs who came and they were talking to them over webinar. And they were sharing that even after that, when anyone from the pharma industry want to go and request an appointment with a doctor, there is a high probability that you'll be getting an appointment over Zoom or Skype, something like that. So, and that will require a different level of etiquette and also how to engage with them when you're not sitting with someone face to face. Like you see, there is a big spurt in organizing so many webinars. We all are sitting in so many different places in this country, and we are connected very seamlessly, and we are coming together. If I was to invite Prashantji from Trichy or Brajeshji from Faridabad, it would have been very difficult. So I believe a new kind of models are anyway emerging, and for the career prospect, they will definitely be there. But the new language you have to learn, and you have to really adopt to those challenges. So I will just stop here because we are running short of time and we have another webinar also today. So I will now just request to Prashant Sharma ji, who has been the main architect of this webinar, to please share his views.
Thank you, sir. As the time is limited, I will not take more than 3 minutes so that we have at least 7 minutes for question and answers. So I have some positive news from the capital markets. So far, all my previous speakers has talked about various challenges and opportunities that are there in different sectors. But the topic, the area which I'm going to discuss, the capital market, that is giving a lot of positive information, especially when the pandemic is still in the peak mode and we are still not able to discover any remedy and other things for that, but still the capital market movements are high. I just wish to share a couple of graphs with you, so I will be sharing my screen. So it will take hardly a minute to show all these graphs. Hitenji?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we all agree that this COVID has created a kind of black swan kind of situation for the different markets, and capital market is no exception to that. I just wish to focus on this slide, and this slide basically talks about what has happened in the past when such kind of shocks was there in the economy. So there was a scam in 1992 called Harshad Mehta scam, and as a result of it, the market was declined by 53%. But in next 1.5 years only, the market was able to recover 127%. So that is the positive side. That is a kind of potential which Indian market is having when it comes to go to the positive side. Similarly, same happened with Asian crisis when there was a 40% decline because of this only. But then later on in next year, the market was able to show a recovery of 115%. Same happened with the recent global economic crisis, which happened in 2008, where there was a decline of 61%, but within a span of 1.5 years, the market shows a recovery of 157%. And I'm happy to report that because of this COVID, although market has impacted or market has gone down by around 40%, that is 38 point something percent, but it has already shown a recovery of 12% from that level. And if we'll see from the low level, which it is created on 23rd of March, it has already come up by 20%. So this is one positive news which is coming from the stock market, which actually presents the sentiment of the investors with respect to different sectors and different stocks. I also wish to show you these two graphs. One graph is related to the comparison of Indian market with respect to some different developed markets. So I'm presenting a comparison of Indian market with respect to China, US, and UK, and it is clearly seen that all the markets has witnessed a good amount of dip. Indian market was the was having the biggest impact, while the China was having least impact. But these all markets has started improving. So the investors are having positive sentiments and they are investing in the markets. Similarly, with respect to the different sectors which are there in Indian economy, if we talk about, we have selected auto, pharma, IT, FMCG, energy, and infrastructure here. And it is clearly visible that this pharmaceutical sector was the one which has actually gained a lot of returns, which has gained a lot of positive sentiments from the investors. So is the case with the FMCG, although earlier it was witnessing a decline, but then it has sharply increased when this lockdown eased out and related things were done in the economy. Indian banking sector, as Dr. Gupta was also mentioning, that banking is going to be one of the largest hit. So Indian banking sector is still suffering because of various government announcements also, which has been taken. Just like today also, RBI governor has announced to extend the moratorium period of from 3 months to 6 months. So with this, quickly, I wish to come to the short run and long run implication. And with this, I'll be done with it and I'll be inviting the questions. So first thing is that Indian market is witnessing volatility. So is the case with all the markets. But then the market has started showing the recovery in both in short run. And it is also expected to show recovery in the long run also. As long as this demand and supply situation is going to be eased out, the Indian market will grow at a faster rate. And in long run, maybe by in next 2 to 3 years, we will be regaining the same level. And in fact, the market will be beyond the existing level, which was at 12,000 level for Nifty, or maybe 41, 42,000 for the Sensex. Thank you, sir. It was very short and
नहीं बहुत ही अच्छा था. It was so nice, Prashant ji. It was really a wonderful presentation. Very, very short and sweet. So I will now request Prashant Sharma ji that
yes,
if
sir.
he can handle the questions, because I have to enter into next webinar, which is start exactly at 5:30, and I have only 4 minutes. So with the permission of all of my distinguished colleagues, I would like to exit at this stage, and I want to thank each one of you for your very valuable time and all your support.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar. So Prashant, you please take it over from here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
There is one question that is coming for Dr. Brajesh, sir. And that is, the question is from Dr. Manoj Kumar Jangir. And he's asking, how could we double the farmer's income up to the year 2022 in such pandemic situation or post-COVID? So what should be the strategy for that, to double the farmer's income? Brajesh, sir?
To double the farmer's income, that's a targeted achievement. Definitely, we'll be achieving it, but the timeline which has been set, it requires to be extended, because many levers of the Indian economy is required to be reset. So timelines will be more, but doubling farmers' income target is viable. It is possible to be achieved.
Thank you, sir. So there is a question for Jatinji. Jatinji, this question is from Dr. Dharmed Mehta. And he's asking how to handle labor shortage state to post-COVID situation. So how these states where there is a shortage of labor, how will they cope up with this situation in the post-COVID period? Jatinji?
I'm audible now?
Yes, you're audible. Yeah.
So this is a big challenge. It's not going to be easy to really overcome this. Let me put 4 slight points here. Land, capital, risk-taking, and labor come together to create enterprises. Now, if labor has moved out, and one of the more important aspect of enterprise, or for that economic activity, is this, then state governments, the ecosystem in each state, the entrepreneurs, the consumers will have to do a lot to create the economic engine running, and then the attraction will again happen. But it's going to be a difficult time in 6 months to at least 1 year to attract labor to revert again, migrate to other locations, because a lot of people have faced a lot of difficulties. So maybe the facility and some of the bigger sectors will try to shift the facility to where the labor is abundant, or where the labor shortage is not a problem, because To give you an example, earlier a lot of entities, the manufacturing entities have moved out of UP in past 3-4 decades to other geographies because of labor issues and land issues or capital accessibility issues. Similar movement can be seen towards labor surplus states. The economics has to move where the ingredients are. That is what I look at it. But a lot can be seen in times to come.
Thank you, Jagdish. There is one question for Dr. Prithvi. Sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, sir. So the question is, how much time will it take? So how many years will it take for Indian economy to come to the previous level where the macroeconomic indicators are strengthened and all? This question is from Dr. Kamlesh Chandra Pandey.
So like contraction is expected around 20-25% of the economy.
Yes, sir.
The issue is how long the COVID crisis lasts.
Yes.
If we discover the vaccine or treatment as early as possible, or we reach to the herd immunity level very soon, which is less likely, herd immunity cases, the main thing revolves around the vaccine and the treatment for this. And possibly the effective vaccine available to the people will not happen before January, February or next year. So this whole year, almost all 3 quarters of this financial year are going to be like flip-flop and up and down. So this financial year will almost something sort of ruin type. By next financial year, Indian economy will again pick up pace. And the many the rating agencies also predicted so. But then uncertainty still lies. How the pandemic will unfold the course. It's still uncertain. Nobody is in there to say when the pandemic will be go down or stop. So I believe next financial year will be much better than this. This is what I can say right this time. And anybody will can say this only.
Thank you, sir. So there is one question from Mr. Akash Tyagi, and he is asking that why government has announced such a huge package that is 20 lakh crore. So why this package is not being reflected in the overall improvement in the economic and the other market activities in India? So is it not the sufficient amount?
It's not really huge package. I just very beginning I said the like Fitch Solution, the macroeconomic and industry research firm, they conducted the research and they said the only 1% of GDP is equivalent to the new spending. The new spending, actually what boosts the economy is new spending, not the liabilities. So new spending is just equal to the 1% of GDP. If you put 1 rupee over 100 rupees, it will not make really much difference, one. And second, the package includes like half of the package is like fiscal measures. What should be done, how much money you can take, either loan guarantee or credit extension by banks or financial institutions or agriculture. So this is not actually stimulus. It's just facilitating the system. And what is stimulus will be like Keynes, the economist Keynes has said, when it is a depression, you just put a lot of money. Money should flow to the people down to line up to lowest level, so that 1 rupee flown will create a money multiplier effect of equal to the 6 rupees or plus. So 6 times impact is generated. If you put in like say $100 billion, then there will be something like miracle type overnight may happen. Otherwise, this is very small money. It's like just jargons. It's just 1% equal to the GDP, or at most, if everything we calculate, around 2%, not more than that.
Thank you, sir. Prashant sir, there is a question for you. How do you see the long run and short run implications on this NBFCs, particularly mutual fund institutions? There are a few students who are asking this question.
Okay. If you're talking about the mutual fund particularly, you are more into capital market than me. But what I know, recently, if you look at in last 7-8 years, the biggest change that has happened in capital market, particularly mutual fund industry I'm talking about, that our own mutual fund, domestic funds have grown a lot. If you look at the size of SIP per month, it's a huge amount is going to be invested. Now, the question is, and I was looking at your presentation, the market comes back. Yes, market always comes back, and I am very hopeful this time also it will happen. And it will happen soon, that's I hope, because a lot of this money which domestic mutual funds are collecting through SIP, where they will invest. So demand has to come. when these mutual funds will invest in market, demand has to come. FIIs are coming and investing, it will give a further boost. But even if FIIs are not coming, positive impact should come. That's what I believe. So I go with your statement within a year or within 2 years that market will reflect positive sentiment and will be higher than the level it was after the COVID. That's what I believe.
Thank you, sir. Jatinji, there is a question for you on the startups. So the question is from Dr. Benita Nanda, and she's asking, how can the newly formed startups survive in this lockdown with restrictions?
Yeah, all right. So to clarify on startups, I see startups have to really look at two things. One, they cannot be market making and cash loss making at the same time. So there are a lot of startups which are market making efforts. They are acquiring the customer, they are acquiring the, capturing the market, reducing the competition. This will change. The startups have to focus on unit economics. They will have to focus upon whether they're generating surplus cash in every transaction they are doing, or whether they are sustainable on their own as a model or not. So gone are the times when you can, have cash burns. There's a specific term used for startups which is called cash burns. Cash burns is going to be, a thing of history. Something which is sustainable in nature as a model, as a facility, as a service or a product is going to last. Startup, this is the best time for startups. Why? Because a lot of new things are happening. The consumer behavior is changing. The ecosystem is changing. The economic policies are changing. Anybody who can take advantage of the change dynamics in long run, and every economic crisis had to some good startups or very good businesses emerge from it. The few areas which I see good opportunities are, agriculture and supply chain oriented, food and agriculture supply chain, enterprises, the startup which can be called agri entrepreneurs, startups in the domain of education, bringing technology and accessibility to lot larger masses in education. Healthcare related startups and innovation will going to be benefiting. Any startup which can create mass employment will be supported by the government, any state government, any central government, like anything. So if you can really take advantage of the excess labor availability and you can create a model around building mass employment, you will be one of the biggest, fastest growing enterprise in times to come. But having said that, startups have to really rethink what they want to create. They cannot just say, I want to be my own boss, and that's why I want to be a startup. They have to make economic sense. They have to be sustainable in the long run. That's what my take is on startup.
Thank you, Jatinji. Vijay sir, there is a question for you. What will be the impact of migration and reverse migration of labor on the agriculture sector?
It's all a game of demand and supply. The labor force which was earlier engaged in the urban areas is now going to be available in the rural areas. And there is a scheme under Manrega through which they can be given some employment, the casual employment. And with that, the survival will be there. And with this scheme, there is a possibility of strengthening the rural infrastructure. So that way, this reverse rural-urban migration is going to be a blessing for the rural economy. Plus, it's all kind of lesson for them also to rethink. Does migration is in their favor or not? If tomorrow some other form of this kind of a pandemic comes or some calamities comes, what is their stake? So they'll be thinking to build future, their own future, and this can be done through putting a pressure on the state government, on the central government, and it is going to be duty of both the governments, the state government and central government, to build some infrastructure within the landmass in their domestic areas, local areas, and engage them. So one of the speaker was mentioning that UP government is thinking to invite investment in certain areas. So those kinds of situations can also be in favor of a rural economy. So that way, reverse rural-urban migration is going to be good, not only for the labor, but also for the state. And that way, we can expect some development in at the local level, rural level, and in the state.
Thank you, sir. So there is one question which has been repeatedly asked. So what kind of recession are we expecting, and what will be the shape of it? Will it be a V shape which from which we'll overcome very quickly, or will it be a U shape from where we have to wait for a longer time to overcome this situation?
It is going to be V-shaped.
Okay, sir.
Sooner we will have some vaccine, and the day when vaccine will be with us, and the Indian workforce, Indian population is such, they will not bother what is social distancing and what to do and what not to do, and they will be engaged as they were doing it earlier. So I'm expecting, anticipating that there will be a V shape, not a U shape.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank
There's a question from one scholar from IIM Calcutta, and he's asking that how do you see the job prospect for the healthcare sector and healthcare managers? Is it going to see a upward swing, or is it going to be on the decline trend?
So
their role, is this for me or somebody else?
Sir, anybody can answer, but primarily Dr. Prithvi is from the healthcare
Dr.
area.
Prithvi will be the right person because it is his domain. He can
yes, sir.
answer
yes,
it correctly.
Yes, sir. Prithvi, sir?
he's not there, I guess.
I think he's left.
Okay, so we can move to maybe we can take a couple of questions and then we can wind up the session. And one question that is coming repeatedly and that has been asked by a few participants is that what will be the short-term impact on the job market, and is there going to be any impact on the government employees also with respect to salary cut and all?
There is nothing as such which is like a salary cut. It has already been cut if you look at it carefully. Yeah,
Yes.
particularly in the government sector, the DA has been withheld for 1.5 years. So on an average, it is going to affect 2 lakhs per annum for a middle level government officers. So it has already been cut. No future cut I am anticipating. But in the job market, definitely an austerity will be announced, and in the coming 2 years, I don't foresee any new recruitments in the government sector.
So
Thank you, sir.
I just want to add.
Yes, Jatinji, please.
See, when it comes to employment, there are new things which are emerging and things which are more self-sustaining in a technology environment. One thing which has really emerged in the past few years is the gig economy, which is project-based engagement for a lot of enterprises. I can talk about the mid-tier enterprises. I have talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and all. They're very, very keen on engaging people on assignment basis rather than having them a complete payrolls for that matter. This is going to be an opportunity for those who are entering the job market. If you are having skills which can generate cash for you and also add value to the enterprises, you will definitely be in demand and you will not be out of demand. But traditional employment opportunities is going to be definitely difficult. At the same time, a lot of people will use technology and remain in the safer zones to remain economically active. At the same time, safe in the healthcare scenarios. People, entities which like TCS have already declared that 75% of their workforce will work permanently from home. Google has declared that they will only have 1 day working for 60%, 70% of their workforce, and everybody else will come 2 or 3 days. 30% will come 2-3 days, and 70% will come only for single day. There's a lot of tectonic shift in the employment market. What will matter in future is whether you are relevant to that role or not. You will not be holding designation and stuff. You will have to really produce output. So those youngsters who are moving into the economic scenario right now should focus on skill set where they can add value and they can provide benefit to those employers, and employers would definitely like to have them.
So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd also like to contribute in this. I agree with Jatin and Vijay sir. Immediate impact on the traditional job market, yes, it is a challenging. But with new technologies, new roles will come up, and there is a need for youngsters to reskill and upskill themselves. And then a lot of opportunities will come, like gig economy is talking about. But as I told earlier, survival of the fittest, you have to prove that you have that which industry is looking for. It is not that somebody will hire you and will pay you without proper utilizing your services.
Thank you, sir. So now I have the last question, and this question is for all. So I will be requesting all of you to please respond. So just share one of your recommendation, only one recommendation, which you would like to give to the policymakers in the post-lockdown period. Let me repeat the question. So just one recommendation which you would like to give from your respective sectors to the policymakers so that your sectors are performing better in terms of economics and well-being.
My recommendation for the policymakers is to really address the demand side, and which has been left untouched. And also another thing which is there on the cost aspect, entrepreneurs have been looking for something which can reduce their cost, employment cost, rental cost, cost of operations, something which is a cost benefit to them that has not bring in. To give an example here, UK, Germany, Japan have introduced subsidy in the form of labor wages, subsidy in the form of employment cost. A lot of entrepreneurs and this segment, the middle tier, have been expecting this, but government has not been able to provide it. They may reconsider this thought process and maybe take that bold step of reviving economy through such steps. So the demand side and the cost, demand on the consumer side, consumption side, and cost on the enterprise side need to be addressed.
Thank you, Jatinji. Vijay sir, your recommendation?
Suitable amendments in ECAs and strengthening in this APMC Mondays will be a boost to this sector. So as soon as possible, these amendments comes on ground, it will be in favor of their farmers. So they will get a better price. They can sell their produce to anyone, and there will be a competitive price bidding, which they can do it through the digital modes, eNAMs also. So those things should be taken care on priority.
Thank you, sir. Prashant, sir?
I think when Jatin was covering demand and supply, that balancing is needed. So what I can say is looking at the supply chain is also very important. And here I would like to club Brajesh ji's point also. Farmers or any producer, say as MSMEs are concerned, they are not getting the right price of their produce. At the same time, at retail, price is not that less. So this middleman margin is huge. Now, this is right time because everything is under lockdown. Government should rethink and decide on policies which would be favorable for the producers so that producers can directly access to the consumers, and that will give benefit to both consumers as well as producers.
Thank you, sir. With this, we have come to an end. For all the listeners, please accept my apology as there were so many questions and we were able to address few. But we'll try to come up with a detailed report out of this webinar, and that will probably address all of your questions. So with this, we have come to an end, and on behalf of IHMR University Jaipur, I would like to express sincere thanks to all the panel speakers, including Prithvi sir, Brajesh sir, Prashant sir, Jatin sir, and to our president, Dr. Pankaj Gupta ji also, because he was the key motivator behind all this thing, and he has motivated me a lot to come up with such a plan and then execute this webinar. So sincere thanks to all of you, and we will be seeking your guidance in future also. Thank you all.